So, hoping Gary will show up. Well,
I saw that clips of that you've done, and basically I haven't been watching Gary stuff that much, but I've talked to him semi-regularly because of the Hangouts and things. It's been a while. I watched his draft stuff, but I'm not subscribed to his Amendham from the last time he blocked me, whenever that was. So I hadn't seen how it's kind of ridiculous.
well,
It's beyond. I mean, because I don't know. His insults are just too every kind of insult.
yeah, well, he's called me a liar, right? And I don't know what you think to this, but I don't think you should make strong accusations if you can't exactly back them up and say, look, here, he's telling a lie, and not just a mistake, not just a simplification. You know what I mean? An actual egregious, surreptitious, maligning lie, right? And anyway, he's accused me of telling a lie.
Well, he says that to everybody.
Yeah, but he's said straight off that he's not said the word braining, right? Well, he said he's not said the word braining. For starters, I didn't say he said it, but I'm absolutely sure he did. But he's simple search through his channels for braining, right? I said the way he puts it, right? So that's putting it. He's put it as braining. Yeah? And you can search through his channels and find 2 instances of braining in his, where he's typed in the description of either the video or in the description box that he's used the word braining.
Right.
And almost, and one of the titles of his videos is almost the exact quote that I said, just doing braining, right? Because that's what I've heard him say.
Which is an old mysticism. It's an old mystic line. But anyway.
But he said, I've never done that, so that's a lie. You've just lied. And he's got a real psychological problem with this accusing everybody of lying business, because I won't accuse anybody of anything unless I can cite, the thing. So I'm hoping he comes along. I'm hoping you're going to keep score. He started this score thing up, which is a bit of a joke as well. What you've got to do is count how many times I interrupt him and he interrupts me, or any times that any insults are thrown, right? Well, I'll have to try and keep score of each other, because he's done these videos where he's like, oh, you've been rude to me there now, so it's like chopping him up.
Well, yeah, that's ironic. Well, anyway, the good news is
just one second. All that was a distraction. I was just going to say about the rudeness.
Yeah,
I've been looking for him, finding him actually saying braining, and looking through all his older videos and anything with the title braining. I just watched a few of them, yeah, and it doesn't appear he's always been so angry.
Oh, yeah,
I've looked at a lot of them, and this is a video. He's got a background up, and he's going, "This is a video reply to whoever," and and he's a lot more calm, and just I don't know. It's just a different person. I think he's kind of got worse or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, probably being the leader of a cult has gone to his head.
I don't know. I'm not so sure.
But anyway, the good news is you found these videos where he was using braining, and so he'll just admit it. His bad. He made a mistake.
Well, yeah, like he will. I hope he turns up and admits it to that. But I'll obviously make a video tomorrow in the week.
But why is that even relevant? I don't understand why this would matter. The word braining. What hinges on this putting it that way?
Exactly. It comes to me. I've just been watching a load of his philosophy on consciousness, and in so many ways, he's saying exactly the same. I've just made a set of 3 videos. He's saying the same thing as me, with a tiny point of, discrepancy, difference. But he's of the same opinion as me. But in the setting of discussing brain function and consciousness, he is very closely aligned with me. He diverges at the end, but But in the setting of value, the very things he's saying in the setting of a consciousness debate, because it's not coming out of his mouth, you know, he's taking issue. Like I said, I'm saying, you know, you feel something, and you know, it makes you if it's a negative feeling, really, you mean you want to go away from it, and you want to, you know, and he's saying the same thing, only with different words, you know, in the brain, in consciousness setting. So it's a bit frustrating, and you know, I've noted some clips, and you know, anything I say, I'll be able to back up. But,
well, the thing about the value is pretty straightforward. Like when I was arguing it with him last week, I think we had a good conversation, but you know, obviously there's the ignoring whatever the automatic value should also be assigned to positive feelings. But let's say you do that and you say, oh, well, those are just worthless, even though they seem good. You know, it's just biochemistry. But you can't ignore the bad ones, even though they're just biochemistry. Okay, let's say that. The thing is, I bring up, you know, masochists and people that enjoy the pain, and he says that's extreme psychology. But he also said he only wants to talk about the extreme cases of getting your foot cut off. He doesn't want to talk about people getting spanked or, you know, anything like that. But he doesn't want to talk about extreme psychology at the same time he's talking about extremely, like, who would cut off another person's foot except for an extreme psychology in the first place. So you can't divorce that. But anyway, so there's this one thing of what about people that enjoy the negative experience? But what about the other side? What if somebody is given a cupcake and it's a flavor they don't like, and they say, this is a terrible misery? Does that have an objective value, that misery? Or is it also just a demented psychology complaining about something that doesn't damage them? And the only way to answer these questions I brought up to them 6-7 years ago, which is you have to define damage physically. You can't judge the value of some misery that happens to someone based on how much they say it bothers them. You know what I mean? If one guy's getting his hand cut off and the other one has a splinter, you have to look at the system, that's the body, do some system analysis like an engineer, say the missing hand is a way bigger problem for this whole system than a splinter. And then the fact that they feel pain, you can give them pain medications. I mean, it's a separate thing to the value. There's an objective value. Surely the objective value is in the health of that system, and it breaks down. It doesn't become absolute, but it's also not just willy-nilly whatever. You could define health in a system, and you can't plug value into. It's just the weirdest thing ever is the Gary system in the history of philosophy. I don't know that it's been tried to go ahead and base all your values on feelings and say they're objective. Nobody's tried that. It's like, it's either I'm basing them on feelings because the world's subjective, or I'm basing them on like whether you lost your hand or not, and I'm making it objective. But he's like,
absolutely doesn't work. I know he's tried.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
And then I said,
no.
I made a video.
Nobody's tried it. It has been considered.
I think I can defend Mendham's position on this, on the negative things, right? Because I'll say to you, if you believe in positive experiences and negative experience, and believe that the scale works that way, yeah? Would that kind of right? Can I suggest to you that, and this is my idea, should I say? Just because if he's going through this tomorrow, he'll be like, "You liar! You're not representing me." I'm talking for me now.
Yeah, well, that's inevitable anyway.
Any scale where you decide positive and negatives, right? And in principle, if they have a maximum at both ends, yeah. You know, a maximum positive and a maximum negative in principle. We might never be able to put a number on it or figure it out ourselves, but I think in principle a brain can only get so happy. If it's pegged at the ends, this scale, I'm going to assert that you can pick it up, move the whole lot down and peg it at a 0, and now say, right, it's all about wanting to move right, yeah, and not left. And at this point, beyond some point, you know, I'm really going to start complaining of a different manner. So bearing that in mind, right, that's kind of what I see him doing, except that if you understand, and I think he's quite correct, biologically speaking, I think that's the way it works, because it makes no difference. The fact that it biologically works like that, it makes no difference whether I make the abstraction of a scale, because it is an abstraction. I'm using words which themselves are abstractions. It makes no difference to us whether we do that, peg it at 0 and only have the negatives, blah, 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 or whether we do it positive or negative. No difference.
Yeah.
But biologically, as a description of how the brain works, I think it is actually right.
Oh yeah, no.
Because every
too simple. No.
Well, no, both are complex. I've just see, there's no. You've agreed with me that it can be done.
No, I agree with that part. Yeah, no, and then you go even further.
The explanation is now you have to look at the view, right? You give me, you say to me a pleasure that you think can't be phrased in this negative way and mapped to that scale that we've moved to 0.
Here's the reason, because here's the reason.
No, not a reason. Can you give me an example of something that I might struggle with to peg it? The
fact that my objection, my agreement to this is that you can model what's going on in terms of pleasure and pain in this positive and negative thing. However, I think that's like, well, for example, would you agree we're not talking about positive and negative, just two sides of the coin? Like, we're not saying if it's a positive experience, it's positive and they're all equal. There's levels of the positivity, right?
What we're saying,
we're not thinking black and white like old school. We've upped this so that there's a gradient or an amount of positivity or negativity, right? So we have grayscale.
Of course, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that we need to have a color metaphor. You just, when you think of things in grayscale, it's still a kind of. Okay, so there is no negative to positive scale. No, so what I'm no, this is fundamental, because when you put getting a nail through your foot on the negative scale and you put eating the best apple pie ever on the other side of your scale, those things aren't really opposite. There is no balance fulcrum that balances those things. They're just different colors out of life, and some people do the nail thing to prove they're a guru, and some people wouldn't eat apple pie. No, so you're doing something simplistic, and I'm supposed to accept it.
The conversation.
Well, whatever, it's simplistic. I try to have the conversation, but it is, I'm just telling you, it's a simplistic.
You can only
positive and negative is simplistic way to look at life.
Right.
It was only invented, like 5,000 years ago.
But that's why I began with where I began, and you sort of went, yeah, okay.
Well, you can do it
in a simplistic way. Yeah.
Yeah, you could say amount of love could be from 0 to 100% and write a video game called The Sims. Yes, and I could go, oh, okay, but it doesn't mean it catches it fundamentally, or what the problem is. When I say where that system will come into limitations, it's visible. It's predictable, and it's not me bringing it up either. This is the ancient issue.
No, you're talking over me, and I've tried to raise an objection. Yeah.
Okay, so, what's your objection to my color metaphor?
No. The objection is for not speaking to what I'm talking about. Right. First of all, the way I see it is the way I see it is I asked you whether simplistically, yeah, we can map experiences to positive and negatives, right? So that is the framing, and it may be more complicated, right, in really nuanced terms, but insofar as you will agree that we can, right, that limitation taken in account, then I said let's pick up the scale and then peg it at 0. Okay,
so you want me to play this game within the schema of a positive and negative?
Right. Yes,
okay.
Right. Insofar as I can, right? So now the point is I'm saying it fits the biology better with this new pegging at 0, because you whatever you phrase to me, what you might traditionally, simplistically, if you like, say maps to a positive, I can frame it in a biologically negative sense, if you like, which seems more true.
By raising the expectations of the organism, right?
I don't understand that, whether what you're saying, whether you.
Well, like for example, I can easily. Well, look, here I'll tell you what I mean. So you've got this window that can move. There's a thing in politics called the Overton window that's sort of a similar concept, and you've got it that can move. Well, I can tell you a cold shower, that is a misery if you have some people's scales, and somebody else might just love a cold shower because they can't have a shower at all. So it depends on where you put this thing. And it's also why somebody that's well-to-do and raised in the lap of luxury like Heroin Church can think the world sucks and see misery all around and feel all kinds of pains and miseries. Because of course, it's relativism. You move that value system around with the individual. So
right. I don't see how, whether you're at this point when I'm trying to describe something and I'm saying I can defend it, so I'm kind of expecting either agreements going along or a specific objection.
Well, I've done both, and you're not getting that there's both. The rejection is that negative and positive is not really that's not how experiences cannot be reduced to negative and positive, even if you make it a scalar.
Why would you say that again? Right?
So that's my objection to your system.
We're in a circle, right? Let's keep within the circle.
Listen, and then so that's my objection. And my playing within the system is because, of course, you can make an arbitrary projection. We can project emotions into colors. Anger will be red, and so I could play that game and we could go, okay, let's pretend the tokens are feelings really are negative and positive. How does it work? Well, you've got a linear thing where there's a range and the range is movable. We agree. In your model, that works. The range is movable. Where's it going to break down? It's going to break down in the fact that there is no linear model of experiences, good to bad. It's it's a three-dimensional space of experiences.
Why would you try to describe the theory that I'm trying to defend and describe?
Why don't I describe the theory?
I see that as wasted dialogue. When you start saying, "Oh, we can do this," when you say we can do this, and don't
well, you're just mistaken there. Look, no, Heidel, you're mistaken. Why would I restate to prove that we are on the same page? So that to show you that I knew what you're talking about.
As bad as in Mendemy, you know.
Well, I wish you would repeat what I say, so I could hear that you understand what I'm saying, and you're complaining about me doing it.
Yeah, but I had a complaint, and you're not even letting me get out that complaint. Right?
All right. So okay, let's start over. We're wiping the slate. Go ahead. You start. What's the problem?
Right. Well, never mind the problem. I'll just start again and try, and then I'll ask you the question. Right. You agree that simplistically we can map to, and I'm trying to moderate. See, all this, I expect a bit of latitude. Yeah.
I'm giving you latitude.
Right? So insofar as we can discuss the complications later, maybe, but insofar as you did agree that simplistically it can go plus and negative, and insofar as we can pick up that finite range and peg it at the zero, and it will still work exactly the same mapping wise.
Yes.
Right? I then make a proposition and say, biologically speaking, I can frame that as a better fit than can the center pegging with pluses one side and negatives the other side, right? So the question I have now is, do you understand how what mine and Mendham's biological reasons is for thinking that's better to peg it at zero?
No, this is, I guess, where you lost me. What do you mean? If you can move that around, then zero is arbitrarily wherever you want it, is what it sounded like to me. So what are you talking about?
No. We've just, why would you get hung up about where the zero is? Right?
Oh, please don't call me getting hung up. I'm trying to understand your proposition.
Can you see the ruler? Yeah.
Why'd you call it zero? You said it would be better to peg it zero. What are you talking about?
Just bear with me. Right? You like to think of a 0 point with positives and negatives. That's or most people like.
Yeah, don't talk about me. I don't think about space the way you expect. So go ahead.
space.
Yeah, I don't think about space the way most people do. I don't think about that. Zero it could be anywhere. The zero's in the middle, the zero's on the end, the zero can move.
Abstract measurements of feelings, nothing to do with space.
The zero, you're holding up a ruler and talking about zero in the middle and left and right, positive and negative, and you don't think you talked about space?
Space is a location. Yeah. What I've said is that there's a finite
space is distribution.
Right? So for some people there might be a zero, right? And it might even move. Yeah. Right? That's the complexity.
Arbitrary.
Right? That's the complexity. You mean when you say arbitrary?
Relativism.
Right. When you say, pardon?
I'm saying it's relativistic where the zero goes.
Yeah, well, that's not helping the conversation.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. This is where you guys are stuck.
You agree that there's positive and negative, right?
No.
And I
think that's arbitrary. I think that's made up.
At the very first starting point, you reluctantly did, and we reluctantly agreed that simplistically.
No, I believe that you can use that model.
Right, well, that's not the question, right?
Yeah,
the question is, do you know, if I was to say, insofar as you agreed, do you know what that means?
Obviously.
Well,
yeah, I contingently agreed, and you're getting confused that I contingently agree. Look,
is predicated upon you accepting the insofar as.
Can I say something, please?
You keep throwing away the insofar as.
You are the one. Okay, it's time for me to.
You are now working within the agreement of the plus and negative.
Okay, look. I did agree contingently to things you said, and then you get confused that I still have my objection. My objection doesn't vanish out of space because, and then you use the word which is biologically more apt. Well, I mean, when you're talking biologically, you're saying, okay, now we're mapping your model, the toy system, back to the real world, and I'm saying, well, it's kind of important to me that, no, you can't actually line up all experiences in a gradation from good to bad. It's not possible.
Do you remember me talking? Right, I don't know whether I actually said this now, but I will say it, right? There's a finite end, which I thought we agreed to at both points, right? There's a maximum and negative brain state-wise that you could report. Right? Personally, it be different for every person. That's a different point, yeah?
So I don't understand your premise.
Hang on.
I don't understand that premise.
Can you, in a simplistic way, agree that the people traditionally think of feelings in positive and negative?
Are you saying you think a real person has a maximum amount of misery or pleasure?
In principle, yes.
Oh, no, I don't think that, no.
Right, why?
Because it can always fall worse. It can always fall worse. It can just.
No, well, for actual pain-wise, right? Conscious pain-wise, that you experience, you actually.
Only because you black out.
Hang on, you will black out, right? So everybody has a neural blackout level, right? It probably fluctuates day to day because on bloody
You think there's a pleasure level as well that you'll black out from?
I believe in the same way there's a hormonal and connection level of reporting pain and discomfort, there's a same informational problem, right? There are only I mean, I know you can be a bit phantasmagorical like this, but to me it's all brain, right?
Yeah, no, I can't be phantasmagorical. Screw that. That's bullshit. I believe it's 100% brain. You're the guys that think it's phantasmagorical because when I tell you how the brain works, you say it's like magic, and I'm going, no, it's just the physical brain. I'm not the phantasmagoricalist. I'm studied in science, and I'm a logician. I'm not phantasmagorical. You guys think that the real world sounds like a phantasm.
I shouldn't have used the negative.
I'm gonna go get some coffee there, and you can we start over and rewind and catch and Vin harvest up. All right, and we can revisit this. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
So I guess I'll interject.
Go on, what you
I think that we can order it on a line. If someone prefers option B over option A, and they prefer option C over option B, but they prefer option C over option A, there'd be something irrational about that, right?
Yeah, well, you got non-transitivity, you know.
Right, exactly. And so, and we might black out from physical pain, but I think you can like continue to like humiliate someone emotionally, call them names and whatnot, and just continue to do it, and they'll start crying, and then and you can still keep calling them names and making fun of their mother and being mean and nasty ad nauseum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a limit on how bad things can get or how good things can get.
Right. Well, I think, for example, I'll talk about your positive feelings. You said from an economics point of view, like you can always have 101 buns, or you know, in that point. And I would say because of the concrete nature of the way that the brain, the mind, is limited by its own informational neuronal construct, right? It can only have so much information. By assuming non-duality, and the brain isn't, you know, tapped into some, you know, energy space or something, right? But assuming non-duality and the brain is the brain, it only has certain information content, right? So if you attributed every location for you feel happy, what's going to happen with the addition of buns is it's going to be like a convergent series, yeah? At first you report, ha, I've got 101 buns, and you go, ha, 102 buns, and 103 buns, oh, 104 buns, 105 buns, yeah, of course I'm preferring it, 106, yeah, I prefer it more, yeah, yeah. Whatever.
Right, I mean, we certainly have a limited amount of neurons. Your point is well taken.
No, that's a metaphoric, you know, descriptive way of how it converges to saturation. But the mind only can hold so much information, and therefore it will converge theoretically and practically, both negatively and positively. That's my proposal.
I agree with you that the brain only has a limited number of neurons and chemicals that can go through those neurons, or electrons. Or I'm not a big neuroscientist, right? But our well-being is not limited to our happiness. Right?
That's a different question, though, right?
Okay. Well, I don't know. I just jumped into the conversation. I don't really know.
You are right. And insofar as we want to keep things simple, I would say, okay, you know, we could talk about that. What's the difference for half an hour? What's the difference between well-being and happiness? You know, but insofar as we keep it simple, and that you've just agreed that the brain is the brain, it's finite neurons. Do you agree that it has a finite amount of information it can hold? That's to you as well, Pyro.
Yeah.
Right. So therefore,
as far as I know it, like
it has to have a maximum, right, of happiness and a maximum of negativeness on that premise alone.
No,
right, but I could be
be
extremely happy as a homeless person, right? I could be homeless and sitting on a beach and meditate.
What's the question on the table?
Achieve the happiness.
The question on the table is there a maximum, right, or is there a minimum? Yeah. So describing a situation where you're homeless and blah blah blah, I concede the maximum and minimums will be different.
Homeless people are mostly mental.
But because of the limited information space in the brain, it's a theoretical premise that there must be a maximum amount of pleasure. How would it accommodate more pleasure once it's maxed out on its information allocation for pleasure?
I agree with you. There's a maximum amount of pleasure that we can experience.
Right.
Okay. I'm just saying that there's more to life than pleasure.
Right, but that's a statement which I would really, it frustrates me. Everybody makes those kind of statements because they want to have a say and talk.
But here's the thing: that the weakness, the weakness of your theory here is that no, the limitation of the information in the brain is only an issue if it gets more information than it can contain. There's no proof that it can get that much information because the theoretical limits on how much information it could contain is quite large, and the information it can collect is limited, and so thus the amount of information that can get into the brain through the senses in the first place, or that it can generate itself, is limited. So it will not be it will not necessarily be overloaded as a fact of system analysis. It might as well be infinite. It's like the grounding capacity of the Earth is finite, and yet you're never going to run out of. You're always going to be able to use the Earth as a ground because there's never going to be enough electrical devices, no matter if you covered the Earth's surface in electrical devices, to affect the overall capacitance of the Earth. Therefore, there is no issue. It might as well be infinite.
No, I reject your analogy of the Earth by dealing with what you've just said. Right? If it's a practical problem with reaching filling up the information space of the brain, then, and it may well change how much information we can get on a daily or moment basis, but at any one instant in time, if I can only get so much information, then there is still, my theorem still holds. There is a maximum amount of pleasure and a maximum amount of discomfort you can feel. The fact that we practically can't fill up the brain, it's what I'm describing to you is an upper bound. What you're describing is a problem of never getting to that upper bound. My argument is consistent within those upper bounds.
No, because I'm saying, let's say you get to a pleasurable state and you can't get any more. Well, you can get 3 more seconds of it, and isn't that still more pleasurable? So you can, the pleasure can accumulate.
What did I say? I said at an instant.
I don't even, what do you mean at an instant?
Right, well, you've just...
I don't think pleasure is something you can count at an instant. I think it's the behavior of a system. No, that's a game I won't play. I'm not going to pretend the mind exists in an instant. It is a system that is moving and in action. It's processing. That's like saying...
The apparent, what we're talking about is experiences, right? And we perceive them as moments. Right, so I've not made no argument about whether the whole mind.
I don't think we do perceive them as moments. That's made up.
We're talking about conscious experience, and we perceive time to flow as a series of moments.
No.
Right?
Nope. We perceive time flowing as a continuum.
No, we make mistakes about that.
We invent moments. We invent the idea of moments. We perceive it as a continuum.
Well, Pyro, are you familiar with the concept between like panel data versus a time series, right? So like,
yeah,
panel data, we're kind of taking a slice of time. It's like taking.
That's arbitrary. That can't actually. There is no such thing as a slice of time. So, for example, let's say a word processing program running in a computer program. You could use that to word process, right? What about at an instant in time? What about in an instant in time? Does it have the ability to word process? No, because it's frozen and you can't do anything in an instant of time. So nothing can do anything in an instant of time because it's made up.
Right, there will be no change.
No, you're obstinate. I'm trying to tell you for years how primitive your understandings are. You won't listen.
Holy shit, here we go again.
If you're happy to, insofar as there's a plus and negative, and you're just being obstinate about there's no instant now, right? You're the one who defends calculus and that we can have a bloody infinitesimal or whatever you want to describe it. You're just being obstinate state. Yeah?
Whatever. It relates directly to calculus. This is an insight into calculus.
If you'll allow a continuum, but you won't say at a time slice, we can measure how much. I mean, this whole thing is predicated on a simplistic measurement of being able to measure.
I don't think you're listening.
If I get you to agree to that, then you're going to go, practically, I don't believe we can really measure it. Well, the whole conversation is based upon the loose basis that we can, insofar as, make measurements.
But that doesn't mean I have to accept bad metaphor after bad metaphor.
And you just jumping in.
Tell me when I get to
for
say
no
something.
reason and making stupid objections.
Well, I think your objections are stupid because the calculus thing is the exact example. In calculus, you do not break that line of time or anything else into points. You break it into little tiny segments that have a span of time. You don't understand. You don't understand how important that is. Right? You're not going to answer that, are you? Are you going to answer that? No, you're going to ignore my point. You're going to ignore my point and pretend I'm ignoring your point.
You're preaching. You never talk to what I've just said.
You never. What do you mean? I always am talking to what you just said. You were ignoring my response every time. What about the fact that in calculus there is no moment? It's a freaking length of time. What about that? Do you understand?
Way off. You take the conversation way off tangent without due need.
Whatever.
Right? You've said we started off, and I do this on purpose because I know where you don't want to be. I know where you don't want to admit being. So
no, you don't. You have no idea what I'm saying. You obviously have no idea the point I'm making.
You shouldn't be saying anything. You should be describing what the problem is with what I've just saying.
I just have been.
No. You're reading too much into it.
You were asking me to accept that there's moments of time, and that's how we perceive time. No, we don't do that. You asked that question. You asked that question.
The plus and the negative. Therefore, there must be a zero. Therefore, it must be measurable. Therefore, at a time period, it must be measurable. This is all contained within the insofar as there be a bloody scale. Right? When you conceded that, and I moved it along, all them assumptions.
What do you mean conceded?
Moved along with it.
Excuse me, as we described, you said, but can't you do it as if this, and so I'm like, okay, contingently, I accept it. And then I come along later and you go, well, you can't have objections that don't accept this contingent thing. Yes, I can. I just described why your contingent assumptions are the mistakes. Your contingent, thinking that the world could be thought of as a series of moments is a mistake, from which come your other mistakes on this topic.
Well, you would have chance to, right, but when somebody says to you, right, you insofar as you can agree to a scale, right?
We have this on tape. You can go look later. And
this is what I find it tedious to if you agree to a plus and a negative. If you agree to a plus and a negative, I assume that you've agreed that there'll be a zero in it. It might be fucking whizzing about, flipping, or anything, right? But if you agree that, and then you want to scrutinise the 0 point existent or the practicalities of it. I'm talking about theory, right? And if you pick on the 0 point, and then once I've addressed this problem and I tried to grab you on that 0 point, then you want to scrutinise the time aspect of it. When I said insofar as you agree to a positive and negative, then I assume that you're agreeing that it can be measured.
But you're not even trying to understand my objection. You're not even trying.
No, you're not even objecting.
Yeah, I am. No, you're wrong. I'm objecting. You're denial.
What was objection number one?
The thing is, okay, you say holy fuck, let me say it then before you say it isn't simple.
You went off. You started off like you was going to describe something to me.
I'm going over the picture that we're discussing. So there's this. We're going positive and getting towards our maximum. You're saying you're positing our maximum expression of the most pleasure we can have, and I'm saying you're making the mistake of thinking all the pleasures at that level are the same. I can move to the left and get the same amount of pleasure, the grayscale, but it's a new kind. So now I'm getting that pleasure from jet skiing, and then I move across, and now I'm getting it from painting a picture, and I could go in a big circle of just perpetual pleasure and have reason to keep going and not black out from it because I can go from one to the other because they're really all different, not the same.
Right, so what have you done there? When you say that...
I broke your system. I've shown how your system doesn't apply to the real world.
No. What you've just done is taken what I said we would start with and said, oh, I want to backtrack. Right? So if you don't want to talk about there being a positive...
Backtrack. Right? No, I didn't say we want to backtrack. I just said it's a
line. If you want to say it's not mappable to a line, then that's it. Right? The conversation's over. But... The frustration is that you agreed to that in the first place.
No, wrong. The conversation is
in a simplistic way, Pyro. in a simplistic way. You
It
agree to it.
distorts reality. Yeah, and then you followed along that argument till you got to a point where the distortion it introduces was important. It affected your conclusion. And the topic is value systems. Hey, the topic. Look, I want to say something.
On the matter.
I want to say something. The topic is on the value systems. I do not have to accept a linear value system. It's not just the topic is not linear value systems and how far can we take them.
Stop saying I'll accept the linear value system.
Contingently as a game system, and I've told you where it's going to break, and it breaks, and then you complain that it breaks.
Where does it break?
Holy shit. You cannot use it to say there's a maximum amount of pleasure because you're starting off from the premise of different kinds of pleasure are of the same value, and they're not. The pleasure of jet skiing, it could be intense, and the pleasure of painting a picture could be intense, and they're not the same thing. You've made them alike. You've equivocated. You have equivocated, and you think that's legit because it's just a simple simplification.
It's
not a simplification. It's a distortion. It is a distortion.
You're the one who's gone back to the beginning.
So you don't understand why I'm saying two pleasures.
Go back to the beginning.
Two different pleasures. Wait, you don't understand that why when you take two different pleasures and say they're essentially the same thing because of their value as positiveness, you're saying.
An extinguisher.
You're going to be ejected. I don't know why what you're doing, but that's your last chance. But you have two different pleasures of the same intensity that are different kinds of things, and your system pretends they're the same, that they're at a point on a pleasure line right at this together, and they're not.
Right, but way back at the beginning, right? You've kind of, this circle.
Let's go back and play the beginning. I believe the first thing I did was object.
Yeah, but I then said simplistically, and you said kind of.
Right,
yeah?
it's simplistic.
But you did say we can go back.
I'm still doing that. We could play with your toy system and see how far it goes.
Your
push
objection,
it to where it breaks.
Your objection, where you started talking about this circle geometry, right? You're saying they're more akin to complex numbers, I suppose, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Right. So
that just gets you two dimensions. It's more like a three-dimensional thing or an n-dimensional thing.
Right. But what we can do in maths is say, right, what's its magnitude? Yeah. So you yourself used the vocabulary which said,
yeah,
we have two things, and they've got the same magnitude, if you like, but
right.
it's different. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
So insofar as we're only talking about the magnitudes, right, we can map them to the line. To a line.
That's why I agreed. You can map them there, but how far do you get in vector mathematics dealing only with magnitude? How far do you?
Making right, but that's the point. That's a simple point.
You're trying to describe a vector space with only magnitudes, ignoring directions that exist, and it's not going to work.
Okay, so I'll interject here.
You're making these criticisms. We agreed to start talking. That's all obvious to me. When I say go on, I'll go with this positive and negatives, right? If somebody says, well, yeah, I know it's difficult to differentiate. Maybe the pleasure, the magnitude of water skiing and the magnitude of horse riding is the same to me, but I can see the difference, and one day I might want to do one and not the other, blah blah blah. I can see that complexity. Blah, blah. I can see that complexity.
Well, it's important.
If somebody says to me, insofar as that there's a scale, I go, oh yeah. Simplistically, it can all be thrown on one line, yeah. And if I sign up to that, I'm not going to backtrack on it.
You can think of it that way.
Pardon?
You could think of it that way, is the way I would put it. You can think of it as a scale.
But I'm talking to you. I've not said you can't think of it that way.
No, I've said you can think of it the way you're talking about, and I still say you can think of it that way.
Right. So insofar
you're going to run into problems with it.
Insofar as you can think of it this way, and that they have a magnitude with your vocabulary here, right? Insofar as that they have the same magnitude, they are different. They're mappable to a line, I think, right? And even with the the vector side of it, right, there's still a maximum amount of information. So whatever we agree on how to measure the magnitude, right, it might not be a perfect system, but insofar as we can, right, we're going to realize there's only so much information in the brain. So there's definitely going to be a maximum amount of magnitude to
See,
the
I
negative
would
and the
like
positive.
I would like to realize here that, okay, you presented a model, other people present models. We're judging whether that model, where it fails, you know, where it doesn't work well with our experiences or something like that, right? That's part of what we're doing.
No.
Yeah. So we're just here to prove that your model is all we're going to use?
No, you're here to raise objections about where it fails.
I have, and then you ignore and get angry. I just described where it failed, and you're not processing it. Hello, it failed.
No. You told me where it fails by claiming a 2D space, right? But we knew about that when we set off.
Here's
right?
the point. You said that there's a maximum.
3D can be condensed to 2D, can be mapped to shadows of 1D, right? This is what you can do with projectives.
Here's my argument of why there's no maximum in that case. Once again, because when you reach this maximum magnitude, it is clearly better than to, instead of overload, keep the maximum magnitude by moving on to another maximal pleasure. And therefore, you can keep increasing your pleasure by moving from different maximal pleasure to different maximal pleasure, and your pleasure could, in theory, continually increase this way as long as you can go from pleasure to pleasure. So there is no maximum because the maximum is in your linear magnitude direction, but since there's other dimensions you're not taking into account, you can actually still make your vector bigger by moving in this other direction that you are not taking into account in your cross-section.
No, that's what you know. That's all you've done is described how it like. Let's say
how it fails. I have described how your system fails.
It fails
what it sees
by appealing to its 3-dimensional aspects or 10-dimensional aspects
or n-dimensional. The point is, that you are reducing the
dimensionality.
No,
but we agreed that we can take whatever the dimensionality of it, we can take a magnitude, right, and map it down. We can agree that the specification of what pleasure is, insofar as it's simple. I know it's hard, but in a simplistic way, mind space thought experiment, we can agree that it can be measured somewhere, and as we condense it down, you've just formulated another point which is posited upon the problems of higher dimensions. But those all problems which are criticisms which are based upon that criticism which we've decided to simplify out of the model are irrelevant, is I guess the point. Is that
so? I think that we can absolutely put it on a number line, and it's for kind of a controversial reason, but people have a willingness to pay for pleasure and a willingness to pay to avoid pain. So therefore we can measure it in dollars. And so really it's kind of limited to how many dollars are in the world.
Oh my God.
I think that, personally people are going to object to that, but...
yeah, a little bit. It's just the same air I'm talking about. I mean, this is the air of this concept of being and people not getting the gist of how dynamic systems work. And then they always are talking about, at the moment, let's freeze time, and it's look out at that moment. It's like, that's just a very limited arbitrary tool. And in reality, you always take a little cross-section that, has
it can
some
be useful.
Dimensionality to it.
We could take a photograph and get information from that photograph about when that photograph was taken.
So what, did he bail?
I don't know. He was a little red in the face, but I don't know. He might have just gone to get a coffee. Who knows? He didn't say he was going to bail, but so we could take a CAT scan of a brain and see what that brain is doing at one particular moment, if you will, in time.
No, that's a perfectly bad example.
Okay.
But okay, a functional MRI, sure, and it's actually telling you what's happening over a certain amount of time. There is no physical measurement of a zero moment. It's always over a little chunk of time. It might be a millisecond or a nanosecond, and you call that the resolution of the device, the time resolution of the device. There is no taking in zero time. It cannot physically happen. It's a huge error. That is why these moral and other questions are so difficult for people, because they think you can in terms of moments, and there's no such thing. And it's important.
I mean, how do you know that it's not like a film that's composed of a bunch of little frames?
The
right?
film is the same way. I'm telling you, that film frame was not made in 0 seconds. There's this thing called an exposure time. It takes a while to make that impression. It's a law of physics.
I mean, what I've heard about physics is that that there's a Planck measurement of time. That when a particle is created, it also needs to create some amount of time for it to exist in, which is a Planck unit of time. But right. I don't really know quantum physics.
Yes, so there's the shortest period of time.
Okay. You wouldn't call that a moment?
It has a duration. Things can happen in that moment of time. It's not frozen. Things can happen in that moment of time. It's not frozen.
So if we just talk about
the moment that things can happen in, it's not frozen. Plus, here's the other thing. Relativistically, wait a second. Relativistically, the Planck moment, it's all relative. The Planck moment for you is a certain amount of time, but because of time dilation, it could be arbitrarily long. Your Planck moment for someone else in their frame, and you could have a Planck moment shorter than theirs, and they would know that.
That's a good point. I think.
So I think the moment.
But so what if we just talked about a very small interval of time? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying we should do, and this is the point I've made to Hythloday, and he just wants to dismiss it and act like I'm dismissing his stuff, and he still hasn't got the insight we could get from calculus. Anybody that studied calculus is that when they tell you lines are made of points, it's a bloody lie. They're made of little tiny Planck moments. They're infinitesimal. They might be, have a immeasurably small length. They work like a point in a lot of ways, but they have a connection to the line next to them. So they have two connections and a little space inside, and this changes everything. This allows you to do physics with mathematics, aka calculus. Without this realization, they were having trouble using math for physics. Kind of important.
Well, okay. But what was the original topic here? I just kind of jumped in the middle, and it was all kind of chaotic about.
Well, the value systems,
Okay.
And he was making his argument about having positive and negative values, and it got stopped at the point where no, you can't really assume these limits that way. So I don't know where he's going to go from that. But I was like, okay, well, I can imagine that kind of a system, and then let's see where it goes. And he pushed it to the point where, I'm sorry, the system you have proposed has flaws that do not allow it to be applied in that way to make that conclusion in a compelling sense. And the main reason is because, look, we all are finally past the idea that something is good or negative, black or white. So, because two positive things are not equal. One is more positive. We all seem to accept that. But we're supposed to say they're all gray scale? No, they're all different colors. There's a million different colors. In reality, there is no positive and negative. We assign that based on our own tastes and flavors. In reality, there's different experiences that are as different from as red is from green, from blue and mauve. They're all different, and some people like certain colors, dislike other colors. They call the ones they like positive. They call the ones they don't like negative. We get confused because we have so many things in common. So many of us love the color green. It's a positive, we easily agree. But some people hate that color green. Oh, and we hate stubbing our toe, but some people want to hurt their toe. And, so that's just statistics. So in reality, there is no positive and negative in that sense. There's just these spectrums of colors of experiences that we either like that color or we don't like that color.
Well, I think there's positive and negatives, but it's relative to who's experiencing it, right?
You don't see how positive and negative might just be arbitrary. Us trying to put dollar amounts on things, for example. We have to think of them all the same, so we come up with a little token where we can think of them as the same.
Well, it's
not really the same.
That I have positive experiences, and I have experiences that I would call negative. Now, some of the
Of course you would call them.
experiences that I call negative, you might enjoy those experiences, right? But that it's all, you know, subjective
But it's just a
preferences
concept.
matter,
You call
right?
it negative. Where does that come from? Where did you get the word negative? You think 100,000 years ago, did you categorize them into positive and negative? According to Nietzsche and the tradition in Western philosophy, Zoroaster was the one that came along and invented this idea of good and evil, as though everything could even be put on this spectrum.
Right, but I
Right.
wasn't here 100,000 years ago, so I
So,
didn't
but the
experience
things,
it.
the words, the concepts you use now, there's nothing fundamental. It's not like your instinct that you put things in positive and negative. Well, no kidding, because this is a 3,000-year-old way of doing it, and it's also
Sure.
behind 3,000-year-old errors we've been making. So it's up to think about the way we think about the world, and this positive and negative thing is it's a monkey idea we need to get over.
Well, it's dichotomous, right? But some things should be more positive. There's a point in the middle of indifference. There's a whole continuum. I'm not saying that it's, you know, black and
But
white.
you disagree that you've created that continuum, that you've just arbitrarily created it. Like before Darwinism, they had created a continuum of low life to high sophisticated life. And when they came up with evolution, it remarkably matched, in a lot of ways, the shape of the evolution in terms of less to more sophisticated evolutionary forms, right? But they had just made that continuum up. Right? You say there's a continuum from negative to positive. Are you denying that you just invented that? You just drew a line on a piece of
No.
paper and started saying this and this and this, and maybe this should go that way.
I'm talking about
Totally
my own
arbitrary.
subjective preferences. So I'm talking about things that I like versus things
No,
I don't like.
but I'm saying you're not even talking about your subjective preferences. You're trying to map your subjective preferences onto a line. They don't really exist on a line. You're mapping them and creating an artifact, a record, a bookkeeping, a file you can put it in a thing. It's not, it's just a picture, a very crude picture that distorts the true dimensionality of your feelings and your values into a good and negative.
Well, things that I'm indifferent about are the 0 point on that line. And the reason that it's a line, like, if I preferred option, like I was explaining to Ethel Day while you were getting coffee, I preferred option over option A, and I preferred option C over option B, but I preferred option A over option B, then there'd be something irrational about that.
No, but there wouldn't, really.
So if I like bananas more than I like apples, and I like cherries more than I like bananas, but I like apples more than I like cherries, there's nothing wrong with that?
The reason there's not really anything wrong with that is that that comparison, that the greater than less than operator of comparing the two experiences, that's like dividing by 0. You can't actually quantify the magnitude of your pleasures and then compare them that way and say that a human being will therefore choose in that pattern when you give them a certain pair. And we know there's a lot of other indicators for a person about, in that situation, which they'll prefer. Right. Besides that, it's an apple. It might be fragrances in the air. It might be other foods they've had. They might have been primed. I'm getting a lot of feedback from you. It's just like, for example, in species, you know, classical categories fail in the same way in species, because you have, if two animals can breed, they're supposed to be in the same species, but you have you know, subtype A that can breed with B, and B can breed with C, and C with D, but A can't breed with D. It's you know, the sets in real life don't have all the transitive properties. Comparisons,
right,
yeah, so it's not mathematics. How much you like an apple and a banana is not mathematics. Just throwing in the greater than sign, you can't just turn it into mathematics that way. It's a bit hopeful.
You can't, because you know, certainly you can have a preference of bananas over apples, right?
You can call it that, yes, because you have found that you really prefer. But if you have two things that you both like and you start saying which you prefer more of things you both like, no, it's going to start to break down. So yeah, you can use it when it's really simple, like I prefer bananas to piles of dog shit, because that's always going to happen to be the case.
Well,
but
I mean,
it's still just
like
a statement.
Banana, right? I might like yellow bananas more than I like apples, but not like green bananas more than I like apples. But that doesn't break it down for that one specific case of that banana.
Or the fact that you're saying a person likes bananas more than apples, but it depends what time of day and when it is and what they ate and everything up to that moment. And so we know in our real life, we go down to the fruit jar and sometimes we pick out the banana and sometimes we pick out the apple.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, it comes down to a short amount of time.
Why don't you compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges? Why don't you actually compare things that are actually relative in terms of their intensity?
It's not my fault. Well, you just got here. I thought it was trying to compare everything.
Okay, yeah, you're in some kind of mood, I can see. I won't last long.
Yeah, I'm just sick of it.
I'm not going to bother. Okay. I'm not going to bother. All right. Just do your speech. You're fine. You're all, I just would like to say you're all but fucking insane.
This is working great. So, yeah, I'm just fed up with making I'll play with these toy systems. Let's pretend that love is a number from 0 to 100, and you can make the Sims game. But the Sims won't really be expressing, true love. It's just a model, a toy, a system. We do it all the time. How does the real world work? We know some things. We know less about how the real world works than what we know is how the systems we use to model it fail. So there's many different ways of modeling values, and some of them fail at all different points. And we might not know the perfect way to model values, but I do know where putting values on a line from positive to negative fails. That's easy. It's the same thing of going from black and white to grayscale. Now you dudes have to go from grayscale to color. Get some color metaphor. Think about colors. Think about not positive and negative, so I gotta force it on a line. No, you don't. You can imagine colors, a spectrum, a color wheel, and your feelings and what you want are not just intensities, but they're also colors. And there's a flavor to that intensity. And you ignore the flavor and go, yeah, but the intensity of garlic and the intensity of onions and the intensity of strawberry, they're all the same. They're intense. No, you're ignoring a fundamentally important thing about values. And why people have different values. It's because it's colors and the ability to like one color versus another. You can't throw that out with your magnitude thing. Well, obviously, I will like a greater pleasure more than a lesser pleasure. No, because I like a less intense color better than the high intensity of this other color I don't like. The magnitudes, the whole world, you guys are all ignoring the flavor of actual reality and why you could find the part of the spectrum and the palette you want to work from. And we're not even looking because it's like there is no color. It's all just black and white. And it's a big failure to this why you can't analyze this problem sufficiently at all. And then I get accused of being phantasmagoricalist because I'm talking about ideas that are too esoteric. In other words, the ones that actually apply to the real world. I'm trying to talk about how the real world is working using ideas we know, like color, and you guys could preach to not necessarily any one particular thing, but Heitzelade and Gary and stuff. They're gonna preach about things like if it's a young Earth creationist who has black and white values, it's like, oh, that's silly. But they're gonna hold on to their grayscale thinking and not realize that they've grayed the world out. Yeah, maybe that's why it looks like there's nothing worthwhile, because it's fucking gray. Yeah, some of us live in a colored world full of color.
So the thing is I've never called you a phantasmagoricalist. For
well, that's good. That's why you're still here.
Okay. And then the thing is if you like something more than something else, then you'll be willing to pay more for that thing than the other thing. And so, like, in terms of money, you wouldn't...
Really? You believe that? Because that sounds like your training. Is that really your experience?
Well, it is my training.
Is that really your experience with people, that they'll always pay more for something they want more, or no? Don't they budget and have these other urges where they pay less even though they'd rather have something else more? I think so, yeah. So
No, I didn't say that they will
I
pay.
want to talk about a disconnected thing from
pay.
reality. It's economics.
Like the things have a set price. Like bananas are 30 cents. So you'll pay 30 cents for a banana because that's the price for a banana. I'm just talking about your willingness to pay, which is different than the price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and your willingness to pay is based off your preferences.
No. It's more based. No, your willingness to pay is more based on your economical resources.
Sure, you're constrained by your budget.
But not just constrained, motivated by people that have plenty of money, buy things that they don't necessarily want more or less because they have enough money to just not worry about it. So it's actually the whole structure of how the decision made is motivated primarily by your economic situation, not constrained by. I mean, like when you go buy some $1,000 thing, whether it's rims or a day at the golf course, it's more driven not by your direct preferences, especially given that you don't have the opportunity to compare your preferences for golf versus tennis versus fixing your car. You don't have that option. So I disagree. That's the whole. I have a huge problem with economics on this idea because they assume like some sort of educated. They're not taking the psychology into account of how preferences really work. They think you can measure whether somebody wants an apple versus a.
You if you have a certain budget, let's say $100 in a given month, you're going to spend that $100 as you see fit, as the things that are most important to you.
How could you say that, really? Do you think that's what people do?
Yeah, I think that if
I think you're just going after the fact
some of
that
that will be you'll save some of your money based on how much you want to save for the future, how important the future is.
You think people are rational? I think what you do as an economics, in economy, or as an economist, I guess, is after the fact we say, see, you valued blowing that 100 at the bar more than anything else, and you just after the fact go, you must. But it's not a rational process. There was no he decided he liked to go to the bar more than retiring. He actually would retire. If you could psychically read his brain, he'd rather retire and not on the street. He didn't make the decision that way because your economic principle doesn't actually apply to how people make economic decisions, sadly.
How did he make the decision if he didn't want to do it?
The problem is that you want to do things. Sometimes there's an instant gratification, and then there's a longer-term gratification, and then there's a whole series of possible things. You could say, I want my retirement, or I want to go out, and what your real preference is secondary because of the guesses you're making about, and also the immediacy of do you need immediate gratification, or are you willing to wait, or do you believe if you wait you'll get that other gratification? All of which is more influenced by, like, I have a job. Is it steady? Am I going to have it for 10 years? It's your actual environment of your resources pressure 90% of the psychology of what you're going to purchase.
Right. We don't base our decisions on the future as far as what the future is going to be. We base it on what we think the future is going to be. And so then we've got time preferences, whether I prefer to have that consumption now, or do I prefer to save and take that consumption in the future, depending on what my expectations of that future are going to be.
Right, so it'd be wrong but see, you keep trying to describe it as a rational thought process, and I think we know it's not. It's an emotional, reactive thought process.
Well, I think emotions are rational.
So when people buy things that have been put right by the cash register, that's just purely a part of their rational decision making.
Yes.
I see. Why do they put them there then? If those people rationally decided they wanted that, wouldn't they get it from where it was normally put?
Advertising is certainly an interesting thing.
Yeah, let's not ignore how it works.
Do people want to be junkies?
Someone was asking me that. I think I was having an attack actually with Glynos about that in a chat room recently. And I think they are having false expectations about the future. They're not really paying attention to the fact that the happiness now will lead to pain in the future. He was talking specifically about was it the syndrome where when people get kidnapped and they fall in love with their kidnappers, the
Stockholm
syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome, and I don't make it a distinction between misguided happiness and the happiness we would like them to do. That Stockholm syndrome is happiness, and who am I to tell that person otherwise?
So what we want is not necessarily what we want, it's what we think we want?
That's one way of putting it, yeah.
Well, look, I'm gonna have
Can
to
you
go
be
pretty
mistaken
quickly.
about what...
I have
Yes,
to
you
go. I'm
can.
busy today, so I'm going to have to go. So I want to have a chance to summarize here, because I think this is, if we're going to talk about values, I'm not going to ignore how I think the system works. And I think I presented it pretty quickly. I don't think anybody's going to come up with a counter to this part, that it's better to think of them as colors rather than black and white. And if you are going to think of them as black and white, why does a white get to be the more pleasure, or why does it get to be less pleasure? Why is it in that direction? What makes those things linked? I don't think that could be defended. And if you think of it as a color spectrum, then people will understand more about the subjective part of values, that yeah, I like blue, you like green, I'm not confused by that. You know, and when you put them all in a linear, of course you're going to be confused, because you've distorted the space so much. You're looking through a weird lens that puts it's Picasso is less, paintings are less distorted. So you've got to answer that if we're going to talk values in here, because I think it's reasonable of me to ask for people to have a color metaphor, to understand how colors work, the arbitrary aspect, the relation, the feelings they give you, the differenceness, the fact that you can have an intense pleasure in one color palette of a room and not in another, and other people will have the opposite. Everybody can understand that with color. So start using color to think about values as a metaphor,
Well, if you could
instead
show
of black
that,
and white.
it would
I agree.
certainly revolutionize economics as we know it. So yeah, if you could formalize that, I would be really happy about that. It'd be something I would like to see.
Well, the thing is, economics is not based upon what people want, it's based upon what people think they want.
Correct.
There. So it wouldn't revolutionize economics. Pyro's talking about how do we describe value, and you're talking about economics, which are not the same thing at all.
Well, economics are trying to describe people in the world. So if there's a more accurate way to do it, then
Yeah, no, and there is.
that's good.
There is, yeah.
Economics can change.
So can your values.
Yeah,
From one
absolutely,
second.
it could change. Hopefully, I mean. So.
All right. Well, hey, that was a good conversation.
Yeah, I got Gary and Heith today to rage quit. Must be doing something right.
What did I miss? I can't wait. You're gonna have to upload that. I had trouble getting
uploaded.
on.
It's all uploaded automatically.
Oh, awesome.
Sorry you didn't get here earlier. I had some stuff I wanted to talk with you about, so maybe you show up next week, or we'll do it online. No problem. Bye bye.
I had plans. Haha. Can you do that? Anything you want me to do? So do you mind explaining what the hell happened today? Eh? I guess not. I'm not going to waste my time on you. You're going to be doing this.
Do I think the Conduog's still here or not? Guess not. Good, I get the room to myself. Yeah, whatever. I guess Piero closed the room effectively by leaving it. It would appear anyway. Should have just left it open, I suppose, in some true sense. But anyway, yeah, I think he's on drugs or something, right? What the hell? Feelings are colors. Really? And there's no difference between the good ones and the bad ones. Really? These people just get crazier and crazier. But you know, and the Contifod was here. I just wondered. I mean, he's just demonizing the demonizers. I mean, does that make any sense? I don't see Andy. I mean, I don't see him talking. So. Said he had something else to do, I think, but whatever. It's all quite bizarre. So, anyway, won't waste my time and such. But, it's just strange shit coming out of people's mouths, I tell you. I will judge you, but do not judge me. Hypocrisy. Insane. I don't think feelings exist in anybody else but me. And then, no, feelings are colors. This is called philosophy. Oh, man. A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Yeah, let's use that cliche. A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Anyway. I think he doesn't realize he's still on mic. Whatever. Yeah. Whatever. Colors. It's all just colors. Yeah. Yeah. You think a train wreck, you're getting killed in a train wreck is dark blue, but no, some people it's pink. Yeah, somebody who wants to die in a train wreck. Yeah, it's just, yeah. There would be, what, 6 people today, maybe? Anyway, it's too stupid. Too stupid. Oh, good night. Off to bedlam and such. Not really, but I'll go dig in the garden. Dirt makes more sense than these people do.